Hello, dear students. I hope that you are all well. As you know that we have our subject biology, and last lecture we have discussed about different agents for the pollination, and these pollinations are divided into two parts based on whether they are living or non-living, and they are, in biological term, they are known as abiotic and biotic agents for pollination. So last time we have discussed already about the abiotic agents, where the wind and water, those are the agents for pollination. Now here we are going to start the biotic agents for pollination. Of course, biotic means they are living organisms which act as biotic agents for pollination. As you know, pollination, this is the process where pollen grains are transferred from the anthers to the stigma. It may be of the same plant, same flower, or different plant and different flowers. Now, these agents, which are living agents, and they are categorized into three. The first one, that is the entomophily, second is the ornithophily, third one is the chiropterophily. As the name indicates, which are originally they are in a Greek language. Entomophily, entomo means insects. Insects are the agents for the pollination. Second is the ornithophily, ornithon, that is the birds. Birds are the agents for the pollination. And third category about the biotic agent, that is the chiropterophily. So chiropteron, that is a bat. As you know that birds and bats are different one, because birds are belonging to the aves phylum, while the bats are mammalian, and hence they are different. So let us discuss about these three different biotic agents which are responsible for the pollination. So the first one, entomophily, and of course it is the insects are the agents for the pollination. Now these insects, they may include various types of the insects, for example honeybees, moths, butterflies, and so on. So many types of insects are involved for this, and the most pollination that occur is about 80 to 90% of this pollination that is done by insects. Means insects play an important role mostly for the pollination. Of course, the pollination which is the step for the fertilization. So this is the previous stage for the fertilization. Now these insects which are responsible for the pollination, and these plants which are pollinated by insects, we can easily identify, because these plants, they produces flowers which are very much decorative. They are conspicuous, they are very attractive. They may be large or small, doesn't matter. If they are large, of course they are attractive, while if they are small, then these flowers, they are arranged in a manner which makes them more attractive. That is the inflorescence. You know that the inflorescence is the arrangement of the flower, that is the natural arrangement of the flowers on the main axis. And hence these flowers, if they are large, of course they are conspicuous and they are so much attractive. Then they also produces certain types of the characteristics. So these are the adaptations. Means what? As we know, the insects are living organisms and they are attracted by various types of the nature of the flower. For example, they may have attractive color, shiny color, while some they have the fragrance, sweet fragrance of course, and these insects get attracted towards that fragrance. While some flowers, they produces much amount of nectar, that is the copious nectar, and hence these insects are attracted towards the plants. So these all are known as adaptations. These adaptations we can see in the flowers or the plants which are pollinated by insects. And the next type of the adaptation of course, that is a condition of the flower where they become more attractive. So the inner parts, for example, just means we have discussed about these parts which are accessory parts, that is the petals and sepals. So all they are decorative, shiny color, fragrance and the nectar. While the inner parts, that is the essential parts, as you know, the stamens and carpel. So the stigma, which is the part of the carpel, it is rough due to presence of hair on it, and because of the hair, the area of reception or receive the pollen grain increases. In some cases they are sticky, some sort of stickiness is there, and it is because of some mucilaginous secretion given by the stigma. So the chances of pollination increases. Next thing is that about the stamens. Stamens, those have the anther, and in anther pollen grains are produced. These pollen grains are rounded structure, and when the insects are the agent for the pollination, then these pollen grains they produces the exile, as we have discussed all about the details of pollen grain. So this rounded structure, the outer cover, which is known as our outer layer, it is known as the exile. This exile produces small sort of some spiny structures. They are called as the spines, and because of these spines, they adhere or they stick to the proboscis of the insects. That means the parts of the insects, and they may have the surrounded by yellow sticky substance called pollen kit. So all these sticky substances, it may be on the stigma, it may be on the anther or the pollen grain, that increases the chances of pollination. Then certain plants, they show some special type of the adaptations. That means they are made with some attractive parts in addition to the normal one, that is the calyx, corolla. In addition to that, they may have different types of the parts which are modified, and they are the adaptations for the insect pollination. So certain flowers, they may have certain types of the outgrowing which is helpful for the pollination, and these adaptations are having this type of the adaptation which is favor for the cross pollination. For example, in the salvia name of the plant, that the salvia plant, which is a bi-lib or bilobed corolla is there, and there is a lever mechanism. That means when the on the flower, when the insect land or sit, at that time what happens, the bifid type of the stamen, it bends down, and the upper portion, which is a fertile part of the anther, that bend down and touches to the back or the wings of the insect, so that the pollen grains are easily dusted on these wings. And when this insect visit to the next flower, then these pollen grains which are present on the back or the wings are easily taken by the stigma of other flower of the salvia. So this is called as the lever mechanism, because this part that act as a lever, that means not our body organ liver, but it is a part which is concerned with the physics subject. So the lever mechanism, which is a special type of the mechanism, as well as you know that the passion flower, there are, in addition to the corolla members, that is the petals, various types of the outgrowth are present, and that makes the flower more decorative, more attractive, so that insect visit to these flowers and the pollination that makes easily. So these are all the adaptations which increases the chances of pollination. Okay, so this is all about the entomophily, that is the insects are the agents for the pollination, and many times this question that is asked in exam, what are the adaptations for the flowers or the plants which are entomophilous? So the plants which are pollinated by insects known as the entomophilous plants, and this which we have discussed, all these characters, those are useful for the pollination by the insects, so called as the adaptations. Okay, so many flowers we can give the example which are more decorative, more fragrance and nectar. For example, our popular example is rose, jasmine, cestrum, then salvia, what I mentioned just, that is the passion flower. So many flowers which are colorful, shiny colors, decorative, all are the adaptations for the entomophily, that is the insect pollination. Okay, now let us see the next slide, which is for the pollination. It is by birds, which is commonly known as ornithophily. So ornitho, that is bird, and birds are the agents for the pollination. But all birds are not involved in the pollination, but certain types of the birds. For example, small type of birds, examples are sunbirds, hummingbirds. So various types of these birds which are small in size, and they are responsible for the pollination, and hence again here the adaptations are seen in these flowers or the plants, those are pollinated by birds. So examples of these plants, that is the callistemon, which is normally or popularly known as the bottle brush, then Butea monosperma, then bombax. So all these are the flowers which are known as the ornithophilous plants or the flowers. Now let us see the adaptations in ornithophilous flower, just like the entomophily. So here we have to remember that birds are the agents for the pollination, and hence adaptations or certain characters are there which are in favor for the bird pollination. That means birds should get attracted, and it is responsible for the pollination. So flowers are usually bright color, large and showy. It is same to that of the entomophily, where the birds are conspicuous, they are large or showy. In this manner, the flower situation is there, that the flowers are so much decorative, they are colored, as the birds get attracted towards the colored parts of the flower, that is the petals. They are large and showy. So we have to remember here the flower should be large, because the agents are not insect, but the birds are the agents, and so that the flowers are big one, they should be big, so that birds should land on these flowers. Hence they are colored, lightly colored, large and showy. Then they have the separate type of the adaptations in their internal parts, that is they secrete profuse dilute nectar. That means the nectar is present, and which is in the form of some liquid type, that is a dilute, so that the birds can easily suck this nectar through their beak, and this beak act as a just like the capillary action, it sucks the diluted type of the nectar, and hence it is easy for the birds, as well as this is the thing or adaptation which is adapted as per the requirement for the bird pollination. Then next thing is that the same thing which we have discussed in the entomophily, that is the pollen grains which are sticky. This is because of some mucilaginous substance on the pollen grain outer covering, that is the exile, and it is spiny. So the birds, they have neck from which the pollen grains get stick or adhered to the neck, that is the beak, and hence easily get transferred from one plant, one flower to the another plant, another flower. Then next one, that is the flowers are generally without fragrance, because here the birds, they have the poor sense of smell. They don't have some highly developed type of the sense of the smell, and hence flowers, they are without fragrance. Only nectar is sufficient to attract them, because they cannot smell properly, and hence accordingly that birds or the agents, the flowers are made. and hence these are all the adaptations. Same thing what I told before, that in exam most time such a type of the question may be asked, that is what are the adaptations for the ornithophilous plants. Okay, now let us discuss about the third type of the biotic agent for the pollination, and that is known as the chiropterophily. As I have mentioned before, that chiropterophily, the chiropton means the bats which are the agents for the pollination. Remember, bats are not birds, and hence they are separated as the different biotic agents, and it is the bat. Now these bats are large in size, and hence the flowers are also have such a type of the adaptation, that is flowers are thick, fleshy, and especially they bloom during night. So what is the reason why they bloom during night time? If we have this type of the knowledge that the bats are nocturnal, means they are activate or they are more active during only night time, and hence due to this reason the flowers they bloom, they open during night time, and hence this is a very characteristic type of the adaptation as per the requirement, as per the habit of the bat. And the examples of these flowers are Adamsonia, Anthocephalus, as well as sausage tree or the Kygelia, it is a botanical name. So let us discuss about the different adaptations in this type of the bat pollination, bat pollinated flowers. So they are dull color with strong fragrance. Now again, this is a very simple logic that the bats cannot see. That means they are activate during the night time, and hence they cannot able to see such a type of the different colors, and hence the flowers are accordingly they are made. That means they are dull color, they are not attractive or shiny color, but they have the strong fragrance. So here the bat having special type of the adaptation, that means they are nocturnal, as well as the smell power of this bat, it is well developed, it is strongly developed, and hence the fragrance is also having the same type of the adaptation, so that many bats can be attracted toward the flowers because of the smell. Then next one, that is the bats, they are attracted toward the flowers mainly because of the smell, and second thing, that is for the nectar. So bats absorb the nectar from the flower, and hence because of this bats get attracted towards the flowers to collect the nectar. Then these especially these flowers that produces the pollen grains which are edible, that means the bats can eat these pollen grains, and hence they are attracted. So the flowers that produces large amount of edible pollen grains, and these different examples are given as we have mentioned already, that is Anthocephalus, which is known as the kadam tree, then Adamsonia, that is a popular name is the baobab tree, and Kygelia, that is the sausage tree, or it is also known as the elephant tree. So these are the various types of the adaptations, and we can observe surrounding to our area or the garden or in the forest that such a type of the flowers are there, where these flowers they are thick, fleshy, and they bloom during the night time. So all these are the adaptations. So this third question may be asked in the exam, that is give the adaptations of the plants where the bats are the agents, that is the chiropterophilous flowers. Okay, so this is all about the three types of biotic agents which are for the pollination. Okay, so we have discussed first one, abiotic agents, that is the wind and water, and certain types of the adaptations are taken place in the same plants. While in the next one, that is the chiropterophily, where the bats are the agents for the pollination, and birds as well as the insects. So all these three are categorized under the biotic agents for the pollination. Okay, now let us discuss the next part which we have, that is fertilization previous to the fertilization, what are the things are necessary? We have discussed already the development of the male gametophyte, that is the pollen grain. Then second, development of the female gametophyte, that is the embryo sac, which is present inside the ovule. Now about the pollination, or here we are going to discuss about the pollination type, where the pollination which is favorable for the nature. That means in nature, if you see that the cross pollination is more important, and hence it is the tendency of the nature to avoid the self pollination. So it is a contrivances called as outbreeding devices. So contrivances outbreeding devices means how the self pollination is avoided, it is prevented, and it allows to the cross pollination. And cross pollination is very important. Why? Let us see one by one. So the meaning of contrivances, that is self pollination is avoided and cross pollination is in favor to the nature. So cross pollination, as you know that different plants are there, different flowers are there, that means two parents are there, and as you know that single parent, when it is present, it is the self pollination. There is no chance of the mixing of the characters. But when the cross pollination is there, then there is a chance of mixing of characters, because in the cross pollination meiosis play an important role, where the crossing over takes place in the meiosis, that is the prophase first, and the characters, that means the chromosomes, get interchanged in between the non-homologous chromosomes, and hence we can see that there is a chain of the chromosome segments, in short, that is the DNA or the genes, and hence there is a variation occur, and variation, that means the diversity is there, which is we can see known as the genetic diversity. So genetic diversity increases because of the contrivances, that is the cross pollination, and self pollination is avoided because we cannot see the variation in the self pollination, because only one parent is there, and when the single parent is there, the characters are just carried towards the next generation, because there is no mixing of the characters, and hence the new generation, that is exactly similar to the parent plant, and hence cross pollination, when there is a mixing of the characters, that is a mixing of the chromosomes or the genes, and hence the variation takes place, that is when two plants are there, when the cross pollination takes place, that is a cross fertilization takes place, and the new generation, new offspring which is obtained, it shows the great type of the variation, and hence the variation that leads for the evolution, and it is by the natural selection. When the variation is there, then there is a chance of evolution. You can see the varieties of different characters get mixed, and it is the tendency of the nature that when such a type of the generation is there, it can withstand with the adverse condition, and hence variation play an important role for the evolution. And there are so many things are there to avoid the self pollination, which is called as the devices, and these devices are there which are developed in the plants. It is mainly for to encourage or in favor of the cross pollination. So this is all known about the contrivances or the outbreeding devices. Okay, now on this part, question may be asked, give the contrivances for the cross pollination or the self pollination, how it is controlled, how the cross pollination is favored. So what are the significance we have just mentioned and discussed. Now let us discuss with the next part, and that is called as the contrivances outbreeding devices, where the different things are there which are favor for the cross pollination. That means how the self pollination is avoided. So let us discuss one by one. The first one thing is that unisexuality. So as the name indicates, uni means single sex. So the flowers are with the single sex. That means in this flower is not complete. Only one type of the sex organ structure is present. It may be anther, stamen, or the carpel is present. Stamen, that is the male flower, while the female flower that only consists of the carpel. So when the flower is with only one sex, either it is with the stamen only or only the carpel, then it is called as the unisexuality. So it is very simple thing that when the flower is unisexual, there is no chance of the pollination. That means in the same flower, same plant, the pollination is avoided, it is prevented. So this condition which is called as a dioecision. So we can see that so many examples are there. For example, maize plant, we can see the flowers are unisexual and both the flowers are present on the same plant. So it is a unisexuality. Single flower with single type of the sex organ. That means androecium, it is present that the male flowers are present at the tip of the plant, while generally the female flowers, they are present at the base of the flower or the plant, and hence it is a unisexual flower. The same thing with the mulberry, while in the papaya the plants, not flower but the plants are also different. That means the papaya plant we may call as a male plant or the female plant. That means two different plants are present and hence the flowers are said to be unisexual. So in unisexual there is no chance of the self-pollination, and hence this is the device, that is the thing which is a favor to the cross-pollination, that avoid the self-pollination. Now the second thing is that dichogamy. Means what? Here opposite to the unisexuality, the flower is bisexual. Dichogamy, that is the both the sexes are present, both flowers, that means the flowers consist of male as well as the female part structures in the same flower, but the maturation time of this male flower and the female flower is different. That is it may be of anther that mature first, or maybe stigma that mature first, but the maturation time is not simultaneous, not at the same time they mature. So there are two conditions in the dichogamy. First one is called as the protandry. As the name indicates, pro means first, tandry, that is the androecium. So androecium matured first and then gynoecium. That means when androecium is ready for the fertilization, at that time gynoecium is not ready, and hence self-pollination is avoided, while it favor for the cross-pollination. And example is sunflower. So in sunflower, protandrous condition is there, where the androecium matured first and then gynoecium matured. While the second stage in the dichogamy or second type, it is called as the protogyny. Proto, as the name indicates, again proto means previous to previous, that is the gynoecium. So gynoecium that matured first before the androecium, and hence the maturation time of gynoecium is first and then androecium mature. Again the same condition, that the cell pollination is totally avoided and the cross pollination is having only the way for the pollination. So this is the known as the dichogamy. So many examples are there, but for protandry, sunflower is there, and protogyny, gloriosa, which is commonly known as in Marathi it is kallavi, it is called as the gloriosa superba. So flowers are very decorative, and that is the protogynous condition. Now the next condition, next device for the contrivances, it is the prepotency. Prepotency means what? The germination rate of pollen grain is fast. Means what? When the stigma is there, at that time when the anemophily, or it may be of the entomophily, or it may be ornithophily, doesn't matter which are the agents for the pollination, but on the stigma of one type of flower, many type of the pollen grains they are deposited. That means at the time on the stigma of any flower, many type of the pollen grains are deposited, but the germination rate of pollen grain which having the fast rate of the germination, so that the chances of fertilization more to that type of the pollen grain, and hence in some cases what happen when the cross pollination takes place, there the pollen germination, which flowers having more rate of the pollen germination, this pollen grain develop pollen tube, and hence when the germination rate is faster, then that pollen grains are succeed for the fertilization, and hence the prepotency, that means those pollen grains which have the faster germination rate, they have the more chances of pollination and the fertilization. So this is called as the prepotency. Okay. Now next one, that is the heterostyly. As you see that the meaning of heterostyly, hetero means different and style. So the length of style is different one, different types of the length, and hence even though when the flower is bisexual, but the style length of this flower is bigger or smaller than the stamen, then that being the obstacle, or you can say that is the barrier for the self type of the pollination. That means in the same flower, when the style length and anther length is different one, then they go away from each other. That means they are not close, and it is not favor for the self pollination. But when the different length of this anther, stamen as well as the stigma, it is different one, style, that is the different one, then there is a chance of the self pollination is very less, and example is the primrose. But there is a chance of the cross pollination, and hence such a type of the condition where heterostyly is there, that is a different length of the anther or the stamen, you can see that anther and the carpel, then it also affect to the self pollination, but it favors for the cross pollination as a neighboring pollen grains come to the stigma on this type of the flowers, and example is primrose. Now next one, that is called as the harcogamy. Harcogamy, that is the again a natural condition which having both the type of the male and female flowers are present, that means the parts are present in the same flower, that is the flower is said to be bisexual, both the androecium gynoecium are present, but in between the male flower, that is the stamen and the carpel, some barriers are there, that is the natural barriers, that means there are the partition where in between these two sex organs, male, that is the androecium and the gynoecium, then the self pollination is avoided. For example, calotropis. If you see the flower of the calotropis, in Marathi it is called as the rui. If you see this type of the calotropis flower, there is the natural type of the barrier which prevent the self pollination. That means it keep away the stamens and carpel to each other, and hence the self pollination is avoided, while the neighboring plants, the pollen grains come and they are received by the stigma easily. Hence this is the natural barrier, that is the harcogamy, which again having same type of the device which prevent the self pollination, but it favors for the cross pollination. So in this way we can see that such a type of the natural barriers favors for the only cross pollination. And next one, that is the last one, that is the self incompatibility. That is, in other words, we can say self sterility. That means what? The flower is bisexual. There is no type of the prepotency or dichogamy or heterostyly or harcogamy. So all are normal. There is no any partition between these two different types, that is the male and the reproductive female part. No barriers. But even though the maturation time is also same, but even though the self pollination fails. Why? Because the plant naturally it shows self sterility, incompatibility. That means what? Even though the pollen grains are this pollen grains deposit on the stigma, on the same flower, same stigma, same flower, this stigma does not accept this pollen grain, but it shows some type of the scars on it. So these scars which are present on the stigma that not favorable for the self pollination. That is the self sterility. Self pollination is avoided because of such condition that the other pollen grains can be accepted by this stigma easily, but this self type of the pollen grains are not accepted. Even though on the stigma of the same flower the pollen grains get deposit, but this stigma show certain type of the scar, injury in short, and they are not accepted by the stigma, and hence if the stigma do not accept this pollen grain, then the germination of the pollen grain, that is the pollen tube, does not form, and hence such a type of the fertilization, that is the self pollination, is avoided, and hence these are all different types of the contrivances or outbreeding devices which are helpful for the cross pollination and which avoid the self pollination. So there are about 6 points we have discussed so far, and on this the question may ask, what are the contrivances or the outbreeding devices which are favor for the cross pollination and avoid the self pollination? So these are the different things or the points that we have discussed so far. This is all about the pollination, how the nature has such a type of the creation where the self pollination is avoided and cross pollination is preferred, so that the plants or the new generation that become more and more adaptive, more strong, more immunity, and so much things. Now let us discuss about the pollen pistil interaction. As you know that the pollen grains and pistil, that is the pollen is the part of the plant male reproductive part, that is a pollen grain, and pistil is the female reproductive part. Now pistil or the gynoecium. So pollen grain, that is the male reproductive part, and pistil, that is the female reproductive part. How these two parts show the interaction? As we know that surrounding to us or in all the forest or the gardens, whatever it may be, various types of the plants are present, and this part or these plants, there may be chances of the different types of the pollen grains deposit on the different type of the pistil or the stigma of the flower. So many chances are that, because we cannot control, or the pollination is not controlled by any type of the controller, but it takes place randomly from the surrounding. It may be by the wind, it may be by the water, it may be by the insect or the birds, whatever it may be. But the chances of different types of pollen grain deposit on the different types of the flower, and this is very miracle that the same type of the pollen grains are only accepted by the stigma. That is the deposition of pollen grain, and these pollen grains, they enter into the stigma and the styler canal, and it forms the pollen tube, and which reaches up to the stigma. Of course, this is all about the fertilization process. So this is all process from the deposition to the entry up to an ovule. This is called as the pollen pistil interaction. Now what we have discussed, that so many types of the pollen grains are present or exist in the surrounding, but this pistil has the right type of the recognition, that which type of the pollen grain is right for our plant or our flower for the further process, that is the fertilization. So this is the ability of pistil to recognize right or the compatible type of the pollen grain, and it allowed to enter pollen tube through the styler canal up to an ovule. So this is called as the interaction. So it is very interesting thing that various types of the pollen grains, though available on the stigma, they may deposit on the stigma, but only particular type, that is the same type of the pollen grains. In a more detail we can use the word, that is the intraspecific, so that the same type of the species are selected or they are received, accepted by the pistil, and hence these wrong pollen grains are discarded. Wrong means what? Which are not of the same type. For example, suppose in the garden rose plant is there, and in the same garden there is a hibiscus plant, that is the shoe flower is there. Now there may be chance of the pollen grains of the hibiscus may deposit on the rose plant, on the stigma of the rose. So they are different plants, they are different species, even different genera, and hence this stigma only receive the same type of the species, same type of the species plants or pollen grains, and this is the capacity or ability of this stigma to receive the right type of the pollen grains. Only it only accept such a type of the pollen grains which are of the same type. That means the hibiscus plant that receives only the pollen grains from the neighboring plant which are of again the hibiscus. That is the shoe plant and neighboring shoe plant, they are same type of the species, and hence they are accepted by the stigma. But when they are of the rose plant, they are not accepted. So this is the ability of this is called as a pollen pistil interaction, and we can see that this is determined by special type of the proteins which are present inside the plant. So these are the proteins which are responsible to recognize these plants which are intraspecific or whether they are intraspecific, and hence the wrong pollen grains are discarded. This is because of the special protein, and the interaction takes place. This is known as the pollen pistil interaction, and hence only intraspecific pollen germination is ensured. That is, the intraspecific or intrageneric germination is not allowed on the plant, and hence this is again the nature's very good characteristic that it recognizes only the same type of the plants, same type of the pollen grains, and this is the very step which is a very critical step by which the right type of the pollen grains or compatible type of pollen grains are recognized by the pistil or the stigma of that particular plant. So this is known as the pollen pistil interaction. Okay. Now next thing is that about the double fertilization. So double fertilization, this process is very interesting, and this fertilization, actually we know that the fertilization takes place. The fertilization takes place in the plants, and double fertilization, this process is only seen in the angiosperm, and that is the characteristic of the angiosperm. So this double fertilization, then what happens to double fertilization, how the process takes place, as well as how this process takes place in different angiospermic plants, what are the pre-requirements for the double fertilization. So all these things we will discuss in the next lecture. So this double fertilization we will discuss in the next lecture. For the timing, just you remember that we have discussed about the biotic agents for the pollination, then different three types of the biotic agents we have discussed so far, that is the insect, then that is the entomophily, then the birds are the agents known as the ornithophily, then the third one that is the chiropterophily, that is the bat is the agent for the pollination, and what are the different adaptations, what are the different requirements, which are the conditions favor for such a type of the agents, biotic agents, to bring about such a type of the pollination. As well as we have discussed that is the contrivances which require, that means which are favor for the cross pollination and which prevent the self pollination, as nature's gift that the cross pollination is very favorable, and according to that what are the different conditions or changes or takes place in the flowers we have discussed. So let us stop here, and we will discuss in the next lecture, that is about the double fertilization. Okay, thank you.